3 weeks after I buried my wife, I received a phone call that made my blood run cold. The caller was her wealthy employer, a man I had only met a few times over the years. His voice sounded tense. He said he had discovered something among my wife's personal belongings that I needed to see immediately. Then he lowered his voice and said something that terrified me. "Do not tell your son. Do not tell your daughter-in-law. And whatever you do, come alone." What I discovered that day shattered everything I believed about my family. Story. My name is Ethan Walker, and until 2 years ago, I believed my life was simple, predictable, and secure. For 40 years, I was married to the love of my life, Grace. She was the kind of woman who could brighten a room without even trying. She worked as an executive assistant for a successful investment company owned by a wealthy businessman named Victor Harrison. Although Victor was incredibly rich, Grace always said he treated employees with respect. She worked for him for almost 20 years. When Grace suddenly passed away after a short illness, my world collapsed. The silence inside our home became unbearable. Every room reminded me of her. Her favorite coffee mug still sat beside the sink. Her reading glasses remained on the nightstand exactly where she had left them. Some mornings I woke up forgetting she was gone. Then, reality would hit me all over again. During those dark weeks, my son Ryan and his wife Melissa became unusually attentive. At first I appreciated it. They offered to help with groceries. They volunteered to organize financial paperwork. They constantly insisted they wanted to make life easier for me. Looking back, I should have noticed how interested they were in documents, bank statements, and property records. At the time, however, I was too heartbroken to think clearly. About 3 weeks after the funeral, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed Victor Harrison. I almost ignored it. I assumed he was simply calling to offer condolences. Instead, the conversation took a very strange turn. Victor spoke quietly. He explained that while cleaning out some storage cabinets at the office, staff had discovered a sealed envelope with my name written across the front in Grace's handwriting. According to company records, Grace had left it there months earlier. Victor sounded nervous. Then he said something that immediately got my attention. He told me not to tell Ryan or Melissa about the envelope. He also warned me not to discuss the phone call with anyone. When I demanded an explanation, he simply replied that everything would make sense once I arrived. The entire drive to his office felt surreal. Questions raced through my mind. Why had Grace left something at work instead of home? Why hide it? Why warn me about my own family? When I arrived, another surprise was waiting. Standing outside Victor's office was a woman I had never seen before. She looked nervous and exhausted. The moment our eyes met, she seemed to recognize me. Victor immediately ushered both of us inside. Once the door closed, he introduced her as Rebecca Lawson. Rebecca had worked in the accounting department for several years. Then Victor opened a locked drawer and removed the envelope. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter from Grace. The date stunned me. She had written it nearly 6 months before her death. As I began reading, tears filled my eyes. Grace explained that she loved me deeply and hoped I would never need to read the letter. But if I was reading it, that meant her worst fears had come true. The next paragraph completely changed the atmosphere in the room. Grace revealed that she had accidentally overheard conversations involving Ryan and Melissa. At first, she dismissed them as misunderstandings, but over time, she became increasingly concerned. According to Grace, they were discussing ways to gain control of our finances and property much sooner than expected. The more she listened, the more worried she became. She never wanted to believe her own son could be motivated by greed. Yet the evidence kept growing. My heart pounded as I continued reading. Grace described suspicious financial inquiries Ryan had made behind my back. She detailed unusual requests Melissa had made regarding legal documents. Most disturbing of all, Grace explained that she had begun gathering proof. That was when Victor handed me a second folder. The folder contained copies of emails, financial records, and notes Grace had collected over several months. Rebecca then revealed why she was present. As an accountant, she had helped Grace verify certain transactions. Several large financial transfers had been attempted using information connected to family accounts. Fortunately, safeguards prevented most of them from being completed. I felt physically sick. Ryan was my son. I had spent my entire life loving him. Now I was staring at evidence suggesting he viewed me as an obstacle standing between him and an inheritance. Part of me wanted to reject everything. Part of me desperately hoped there was another explanation. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. For the next 2 hours, Victor and Rebecca carefully walked me through every document. By the time we finished, my hands were trembling. Grace had not hidden the envelope because she doubted me. She hid it because she feared I would refuse to believe the truth. And she was probably right. Even then, I struggled to accept it. Over the following weeks, I quietly investigated. I did not confront Ryan. I did not mention the letter. Instead, I observed. The things I noticed were impossible to ignore. Ryan repeatedly asked detailed questions about my savings. Melissa constantly brought up selling my house. Both of them seemed strangely impatient whenever discussions about future inheritance arose. Every conversation felt calculated. Every act of kindness suddenly seemed rehearsed. Then came the moment that removed all doubt. One evening, I accidentally overheard Ryan and Melissa talking in my kitchen. They thought I was asleep upstairs. Melissa complained that things were taking longer than expected. Ryan responded with a sentence I will never forget. He said they needed to stay patient because eventually everything would belong to them anyway. Hearing those words from my own son felt like being stabbed in the chest. That night, I sat alone for hours. I cried harder than I had cried at Grace's funeral. Not because of money, because of betrayal. The child I had raised no longer saw me as a father. He saw me as an asset. At that moment, I made a decision. I contacted an attorney. Over the next several months, I reorganized every aspect of my estate. I created protections around my finances. I transferred portions of my wealth into charitable trusts. I established scholarship funds in Grace's name. Most importantly, I ensured my future would no longer depend on people who viewed me as a financial opportunity. When Ryan eventually learned about the changes, his reaction confirmed everything. He was furious, not concerned about my well-being, not worried about our relationship, angry about the money. The argument that followed exposed years of hidden resentment and entitlement. For the first time since Grace's death, I felt peace. Then, one afternoon, I visited the scholarship program established in her honor. Several students shared stories about how the funding had changed their lives. Listening to them, I felt closer to Grace than I had in years. Her kindness was still helping people. Her legacy was alive. And because of her courage, I had been protected from a betrayal that could have destroyed me. Today, I still miss my wife every single day. There are moments when I would give anything to hear her voice again. But I remain grateful for one final gift she left behind. She knew the truth when I could not see it. She gathered evidence when I would have ignored the warning signs. And she found a way to protect me even after she was gone. The envelope hidden inside her office did more than reveal a secret. It saved my future. Sometimes the people we trust most can hurt us the deepest. And sometimes the person who truly loves us continues protecting us long after they are gone. As I left the scholarship ceremony that afternoon, I looked up at the sky and smiled. For the first time since losing Grace, I felt something other than grief. I felt gratitude. Her final message had exposed the truth, protected my future, and reminded me that real love does not end when a person dies. Sometimes love leaves behind a warning. Sometimes it leaves behind a legacy. And sometimes it leaves behind exactly what we need to survive.